I think we're all aware, Mr. President, that parts of our world are on fire. The world is on fire in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. The world is on fire in the Middle East. I wouldn't describe the world as being on fire in the Indo-Pacific, but there's certainly embers, and they are smoldering. And I think it's clear to most Americans, Mr. President, that President Xi in China, President Putin in Russia, and the Ayatollah in Iran are working together. And their objective is to have Russia dominate Central and Eastern Europe, to have the Ayatollah in Iran dominate the Middle East. The Ayatollah, of course, has funded and supports Hamas. There's no cause in the world, none, that can justify what Hamas did to the innocent people of Israel. The people of Hamas are so evil they will kill you and drink your blood out of a boot. And President Xi and President Putin and the Ayatollah in Iran are just fine with that. And the third objective of China, Russia, and Iran is to allow China to dominate the Indo-Pacific and be free to make moves in sub-Saharan Africa and in South America. Parts of the world are on fire. America is about to find out what it is made of, because the world I just described is not a world that's safe for America. But as we meet these challenges, Mr. President, and by God, we will meet them. We will meet them. While we're doing that, Mr. President, I don't want us to forget about our homeland. We've got a lot of problems domestically, and I don't want us to lose sight of them. I think about them every day. I know you do too, Mr. President. We still have millions of Americans who are too poor to be sick, despite the fact that we have the best quality of health care in America in all of human history. Notice I didn't say that we have the best way of delivering that health care, but we have the best quality of health care in all of human history. But we've got people in this country, many of them are middle class, who are too poor to be sick. Since the Affordable Care Act passed, we were told it was going to make our lives better. It was going to make health insurance more accessible and cheaper. Since the Affordable Health Care Act is passed, health insurance premiums have tripled. We also know domestically, Mr. President, that our border is an open, bleeding wound. It is an open, bleeding wound. And it isn't within the power of this Congress to fix that. But none of those domestic problems that I just described, and I could continue with others, as I know you could too, Mr. President, is hurting the American people as much as President Biden's inflation. Not a single one. President Biden's inflation is gutting the American people like a fish. It is a cancer on the American dream. In my state alone, in Louisiana, we're not a wealthy state. My people are pretty middle class. They get up every day, they go to work, they'll bathe and all. They try to do the right thing by their kids, try to save a little for retirement. The median household income for a family of four in my state's $55,000 a year. A lot of states are above us, some are below us. President Biden's inflation, which is man-made, and that man's name is Joe Biden, is costing my people, the average Louisiana family, $806, not a year, a month. $806 a month. That's $9,700 a year. Now imagine if you were making $55,000 a year and you've got to come out of pocket with an extra $9,700 a year. You blow through your savings. You max out your credit card. You borrow from your children's college education plan. You borrow from relatives. And then what do you do? Now, I know what some of my colleagues are thinking, but Kennedy, we're doing better on inflation. And we are. And I am so thankful. A year ago, inflation in this country was 8.2%. Today it's 3.7%, and I am so happy. And I hope it continues to go down. But it is important for us to remember what that means. A reduction of inflation from 8.2% to 3.7%, which is still, of course, too high, just means that inflation is rising less rapidly. We still have inflation. Prices are still high. They're just not going, and they continue to go up. They're just not going up as quickly as they were. Now, that's a good thing, but it doesn't solve the problem. That's what we call disinflation. When inflation is rising and we stop it from rising so quickly, that's called disinflation. But that's not what most Americans care about, though that's important to them. What they care about is the prices going down, and that's de-inflation. And we do not have de-inflation. The point I'm trying to make is we're stuck with these high prices. If they get inflation down to zero, those high prices are not going down. They're going to remain the same, Mr. President. They're just not going to rise as quickly. We are stuck. The American people are stuck with these high prices because of the Biden administration. Now, I could cite you, Mr. President, all the sterile statistics you would like. But I want to try to describe in specific terms what it's like for my people to go to the grocery store. This is an exaggeration, but not by much. To have to think about, well, do I have to sell blood plasma today in order to go to the grocery store? Do I have to draw down on the second mortgage on my home in order to go to the grocery store? Since President Biden has been in office, consumer goods in the United States of America are up 17%. Electricity is up 25%. Eggs are up 29%. They're not going down, folks. Even if inflation goes to zero, those prices aren't going down. Potato chips up 30%, bread up 28%, coffee 30%, rice 26%, flour's up 28%, milk 18%. A half gallon of ice cream, 21%. Chicken, 20%. When you look at larger categories, this is what's happening to the American people. Since President Biden took office, all goods and many services in the wealthiest country in all of human history are up 17%. Food's up 20%. Housing is up 17%. Clothing is up 12%. Used cars and trucks are up 25%. New cars and trucks are up 20%. And mortgage rates are up 174%. 174%. Now, some may be saying, well, but wages are going up too. Thank goodness. In some cases, wages have gone up. But the average wage of the average American has gone down after inflation. You don't look, the appropriate way to look at wage increases is not to look at the raw or the aggregate increase. It's looking at the increase after inflation. And if you take all of the average wage increases in the United States of America, and you look at the average inflation in the United States of America, workers have actually lost ground. Workers today, in November of 2023, are actually making less per hour after inflation than they were of February 2021. So don't let anybody tell you that wages have made up for this. They haven't kept up with inflation. And don't let anybody tell you, Mr. President, that we're winning the war on high prices. We are getting inflation down. No thanks to the Biden administration and, quite frankly, the United States Congress. That's thanks to the Federal Reserve. They have tightened interest rates, which has hurt a lot of people. But they have gotten inflation down. They've had to do it with one arm tied behind their backs, because the other way you attack inflation, and the only way we've ever successfully gotten down, is to have Congress do its part and reduce the rate of growth of spending and debt accumulation. But we haven't done that. We haven't done that. In fact, since 2019, the population of the United States of America is up 1.9%. Our country's grown 2% since 2019. You know how much our budget has grown? 55%. This inflation is man-made, and the man's name is Joe Biden. And we need to address it. So as we fight a hostile world, which day by day is becoming less safe for the American people, I don't want us to lose sight, Mr. President, of another problem, an equally important problem, that is stealing the American dream, and it's called President Biden's inflation. Mr. President, I suggest the absence of a quorum.